Can we start? So, and I should share my screen, or did I share it already? Yes, it's shared. Okay, perfect. Yes, okay. Yes, okay, it would be nice we can start. So please in the back, come to the front. I feel like a teacher and saying to the students, come, you don't need to be afraid. There is still place. Yes, 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 I know. Okay, so we will catch up where what we did last year and where we ended. There are two microphones. I think this is it's okay. Okay. First of all, we had during the last period 14 new members. Some we welcomed already in Milan, but the last ones are the recent ones, and Dragana Kurovic is the really last one. She yesterday joined, so welcome. And I understood you are from landscape architecture, so that's an interesting combination. Then Paz Núñez Martí is not here, but he's replaced by somebody. Is the Spanish delegation here? Ah, it's pity, it isn't. Okay. Then Katharina Lente, Céline Geerings, that was already in Milan. Tino Schlinzig, who was in Antwerp. Jennifer, who was here in the first session. Okay, I hope we will have some Swiss delegation too, because it's important that we have all the nationalities here. Switzerland, yeah. And Evelyn Halte is too. Then Bernard Humont and Janera Wilson, Daria Volkova, Nevina Novakovic, Franciela Cardoso, and Barbara Karkowska. And she was here, if I remember well. She joined online in Antwerp, Barbara. Yes. Okay, welcome to be live here in the meeting, and okay. Okay. So what is the main goal of working group 2? We said we will launch a common and specific vocabulary related to middle class mass housing, consolidate and sharing methodology, establishing a set of concepts, and building a key analytical framework on middle class mass housing. And so these are the 4 pillars, and we want that is crucial for the adequate indexing of digital information that we collect. And it's also important to make comparative studies, that we have a vocabulary that allows us to compare cases between different countries. So the first thing we did in our action was starting with bibliographical references. That are the Excel files, the famous Excel files, a bit similar like they had in working group 1, with on the one hand references on several aspects of studying middle class mass housing. There is also policy in it, but there is also architecture, historical analysis, construction history, and whatever. The template has another one with international references that are books who are inspiring methodologically, but not necessarily connected to the country you are representing. And the last one then, it's some numbers on kind of housing typologies, the location and the scale. And we allow some explanation to explain where you found these numbers and how you brought them in. So that was what we first did. And we have so far 11 templates with these references templates, which is not that much, I think. And some who made the lexicon template did not already make a references template. So like Germany, Denmark, North Macedonia, Serbia, Slovakia, and Switzerland, to name a few. Here we will have to discuss, do we include it in the publication, or do we leave it as a kind of product, but that will not lead to a specific publication. And then we thought, okay, we each, initially the first meetings in all the working groups, there was a recurring discussion also this morning on the definition of middle class. What is middle class? It was already in the Milan conference far before this project, the question, what is middle class? And you have middle class and higher middle class and lower middle class, things like that. So we thought, instead of trying to find one definition, we already realized that Europe is so diverse that it's not possible to make one definition. Even in the former Eastern European countries, there was no middle class. If you take that concept sociologically, and there are other ways to look what could middle class architecture be. And so we thought, let's start from examples and terminology to catch or to try to grasp what is middle class. And so the next thing we did was making a template. I will give you the last one I received. That was from Estonia. Thank you to Ep for that. And so with the template, we asked to show some examples of what is in your country specific for middle class and middle class mass housing. And so we see there are different ways to approach it. You can approach it chronologically in time. What we often see is that in countries there is on the one hand high-rise middle class, and on the other hand low-rise middle class. Like I talked with the one who made the Serbian template, and there it's the same, the high-rise like in New Belgrade and so on, but then the low-rise middle class is in the rest of the country, not in the cities, a main typology. And an understudied typology, even more understudied than the high rise. So these are things that come up in these templates, like what is middle class and what is mass middle class, and is it an vertical or is it horizontal, the amount? And then, but also other terms like holiday homes come in, and really specific terms for certain rooms or certain plans and so on. Now, so far, we were quite successful as we are the smallest working group. We have 17 templates so far from Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Denmark, Lithuania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Serbia, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Switzerland, Cyprus, Italy, Portugal, and UK. Poland we don't have, we have the reference list, but not the lexicon. Spain promise, yes? Okay. Ah, yes, I showed one. Okay, that's good that we, Estonia and Greece. Okay. Then it's the moment to see. So in the, maybe I thought it can be interesting also to see online for those who, so you go to working group 2, and then, you working group 2. And then the lexicon templates, it's here. The template of the bibliography, it's here. It's the one of 3 February. So there you have the ones, the Excel. So here, Greece should then be in, and Italy. Ah, yes, Italy is in, yes. And Estonia too. There are, I also have seen there are some problems like Estonia, I think, and that I cannot open. There is something wrong with the online software. So if you can re-upload it, that would be nice. I don't know. There, he says there is a mistake, and why other I can open, like Italy, I can also not open. Okay, then I don't know what's going on. Yeah. And then maybe. Download. Let's see what happens. Yes, then it will work. Okay, so that are possibilities. Yes, okay. Good, I close again. And so for the template, it's in our okay, that's I looked which are there, and okay. So then this became clear. No, I'm yes. So here is where the templates are stored. So if you make one, you also find the template like it is here, the Blanco, and you can use it to to make your own templates. All right. And so here it's very important that we have support from the other countries who are not in working group 2, but in working group 1 or 3. The template, we made it very, very accessible. So you have to think about some images, some words, but it's not that much work. So that template should work that every country participates and makes such a template. So yes, this gives you an idea. There is one page more here, 4 pages. So it's feasible, or it should be feasible. And as deadline, the 31th of May would be nice that the countries who are not included yet submit templates. Okay. Yes. Layout. Yeah, for the layout, I'm looking to Louisa. Is she here? Yes, Louisa. Yes, so but it will depend on what we will do in our joint publication. But when we make a joint publication, I thought it would be nice to have a kind of layout that these Word templates can be converted into a InDesign layout or whatever you use. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Louisa. Thank you. And then the ideas that I discussed already with Ines, that in the templates, that the words, if possible, that the words that are used in the lexicon will also be mentioned in the templates, even by mentioning these houses are not discussed, but at least that there is a link with them. So then what we did, we worked further on the templates, and we did that a month ago in the Writing MCMH workshop in Antwerp. A hybrid conferences with people who were there and people who were online. And yeah, we also did a tour the second day, and the tour was very inspiring. We visited, on the one hand, social housing projects that were initially inhabited by middle class, and we also visited real middle class mass housing that were developed by commercial developers. And the contrast was what was striking, that in social housing, the communal spaces inside were rich designed. There was place to meet. The corridors were nice. People could put plants on the corridors, could talk with each other. The roof terrace was often available and open. So there are, and also the gardens, there are communal spaces where people meet. And they were often very innovative as well. Like here, you see the Kiel of Bram, which is inspired by l'habitation of Le Corbusier in France. You see it in how the colors are used, and also the integration of art and architecture. So very nice projects. Also the public space that was designed that people could sit there, play gardens and so on. It was really as social housing. Why in the commercial housing, like the Bist and also Fruit of Land we went to, it was a completely other feeling. There was greenery, but the green was not, it was private. They didn't want people to walk there. It was really for prestige. There were balconies, but often balconies also at the side walls where there are no windows. So just for prestige and for the image. The entrances, this is the one you see here is a small one, but other entrances were very luxurious. with marble and very rich materials, like I saw in the template of Italy too. But when you went inside, the corridors inside, they were very sad. They were just light, no view. And so the result is that people, they don't communicate with each other. So in interviews, they don't know each other. They have a nice prestigious entrance hall, but they don't have meeting places inside the building. And so this trip inspired us, like what is actually middle class, and what are the micro typological elements of middle class, like the entrance hall, like the lawns, like the garages. In social housing, there was no garages, and in the other one, there were a lot of garages, underground garages. And so what we did then, we the whole day actually, each who was there online or in real showed or presented the template that he or she made. And so we saw one of the conclusion of the first day was that low-rise dominant is in many countries, and it is mass housing in disguise, we called it. Sometimes built attached or detached or row houses that could differ. Then there are specific names that are used for specific typologies, like vermet or boerderet. It's the same word, but the one in Belgium and the other in the Netherlands for an imitation farmhouse. And then chalondolet, it sounds similar, but it has another meaning. It's a more bourgeois way of living. Then also there are names for specific plants, like the pistolgang in Denmark. It's a floor plan in the shape of a pistol, so that is a specific typology. Or the doorzoonwoning in the Netherlands, it's with living rooms that have where the sun can shine through, so it's open on two sides. So that were specific names for specific standard plans. Then the best room was also a thing that was coming recurring in several cases. And like in Portugal, there was a living room, but also still a room for the maids. So why in most, I think, or at least Central Northern Europe, there were no maids who lived in the house. In Portugal, with the colonies, it was still a practice that for middle class, they have a servant who lived in the house. Then there were a mixture of amount of rooms. Another term, fence terror, it was the tendency to enclose your plots. It came from Denmark too. Then there were also expressions to indicate a bourgeois way of living, like Sam Sophie from France, and in the Netherlands, Huisje, Bompje, Beestje was one. If you have a house and a tree and a kid is actually the meaning, you are done. Then prefabrication, that was also a recurring topic, and industrialization and civil ways of plakka and plattenbouw and so on. Then certain elements like the portique, that are big entrances that comprise, there's a kind of communal space that gives entrance to more than one, to several dwellings. And also in Greece, there was something similar with that communal space at the entrance. Then holiday homes came also back. Collective housing, especially in the former Eastern countries. And then also a tendency to fly out of the city and architecture for the rural, which matches with the low rise. So that were the issues that came up the first day, and that we then presented to, we had some Filippo De Pieri and Anne Kokkelkorn, who were our keynote or commentators. Yes?
There was an explanation that the dead were buried somewhere.
Yes, that's in the best room. In Belgium, it happened. So in Belgium, there was a best room in front of the house. And when somebody died, they buried the dead there. And the stores were down, and the clocks were put away, and the mirrors were put away. And it was to say time is standing, it's eternal time now.
I've seen that in Italy, but it's not in glass housing.
But that could be, we just are explaining, in Portugal, it's the television room. and the dead who are buried are in the best room. So we just, it's the way of making notes. It's not that we said that in every country it's like that. Okay, so yes. So okay, it's the guest room. Okay, yes. Salon, parlor, or parlour. Yes. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah, and another topic that came up also was so what are the because we had some said, oh, but middle class, is it about the economic status of the inhabitants? And we say, no, we want to look to the architecture that is discriminating middle class from others. And so housing as a means of representation, status, and habits was an important one. Material culture is a way to define middle class. That is the approach we want to take. But we also realize that there is a changing reputation in what is middle class, like from working to middle class or the other way around. So that the term is in transition, and that what is once middle class can become lower class and the other way around. And then the symbols of middle class, like the doorbells, and there are some symbols that define it's middle class or not. And then we had the commentators. Filippo Di Pieri suggested a linguistic approach, and he called it fantastic material, but what is it actually telling us? And it's the terminology that is comes from a written language and popular expressions speaking about architecture. Some material is based on our experiences, and yeah, that is a challenge to mobilize these terms to make a multi-perspective on middle-class mass housing. And so his suggestion was to start from a linguistic phenomenon as a start from comparison, and also that borrowing linguistic from other languages is also a theme that was coming back. Like the Belgian fermet, it's a French term that comes from la ferme, and then is changing the name and doing its own thing with it. Then another approach could be the tension between the daily language to speak about it and the technocratic terminology of housing. So the whole terminology on industrial building and plaka and so on, and how these communicate with each other. And yeah, so could we catch this in our lexicon? That was a question. And of course also that some terms change over time. So not only their status of social class changes, but also the terms can have a stronger meaning or even become a stigmatization over time. Yeah, like the fermet by planners, it's denounced, and it's like how people should not live because it's not authentic enough. It seems like a farmhouse, but it is not inhabited by farmers. So that can change over time. And then Ann Cocklecorn, our keynote speaker, she actually advised a typological approach of micro elements. So if we, for example, would make a comparison on industrialization, it would take us far too way. But if we look to specific entities, it can show the richness of the material in a limited element. And for example, she proposed best room, the fences, terror, portique houses, the patio, the gallery, the terrace. So that were the ideas. And then the questions that can be asked when discussing these typologies are how they are called in a specific context, how they appear in different contexts, the level of government, the process of rereading these elements. And so there could be made comparisons to develop the cases in their own rights. And that's then the end result, but I will then show more in detail. We came up in the end with 6 topics. The first one was the entrance, the second room in the house, then the balcony, the garden, the garage, and advertisements. And for each of these chapters or papers or essays, thematic essays, we have a coordinator, and then we also already looked how can the others participate in this paper. And so, for example, the entrance, it starts, yeah, that's with an introduction that I would lead that, and Maria had a quote on it. And so what it will be in there, the name of the block and the name of the plot indicated on the entrance. For example, the entrance as importance of names as elements of prestige. And already there we discovered the difference in practices in Belgium and Portugal, for example. In Belgium, the names are mentioned at the doorbells, while in Portugal, apparently it's completely not the case. It are numbers. So it tells something about the visibility and the representation to public space, the anonymity that is important in Portugal, while in Belgium, it's, yeah, you have the name, and I think in many countries, I don't know, I wonder how it's, I think the majority, they show the names at the doorbells, but apparently it's not everywhere the case. And Adrienne of Hungary, she would do the changing habit after socialism, how, how entrance halls changed. Then the furnishing of the entrance hall, Tino was really really inspired by how the entrance halls look like, and especially this image. I will show it back. This one, and this is the image of him. It's almost like an altar. It has like a Christian thing almost, with the doorbells on, presented like on a like a gâteau or something. So the elements and how it is furnished, and often with a mirror in it, a seating element and a plant that are often but also we also saw paintings. The entrance halls, yeah, they have a name. That is actually what I also they have a name, and they are often named to artists like Renoir, Monet, and so on. And then in the entrance hall there is a reproduction of Monet or Renoir, or we saw how people and how the names are a way to make the entrance hall more prestigious. And like in socialist former countries, I understood initially it was not the case. The entrance halls didn't have a name, but then the project that were built after socialism, also they were given a name, like I live in residence, and then a name, how it is called. So that are always, in social housing, you don't have a name. So it's a way to discriminate what is social housing and what is middle class housing. So that's the first. And the second, the furnishing. So the materials that are used. Also Maria would do something about how the entrance hall identifies the middle class. Another thing is art, and which artwork that is integrated in the building. There, Eva and Leonore. And Leonore mainly mentioned that there is fewer art in middle class in comparison to social housing, and in Belgium it's also the case, and it's another kind of art too. Then planters, the plants that are placed there, fake plants sometimes. So what is the importance of the plants? Mailboxes and doorbells. Yeah, there. I talked already about anonymous mailboxes. Anna would write something about that. And Lidwien about the full information, especially in the Netherlands. They are very open. Also, the windows are open, and so the difference in anonymity or not. Then, if there is a doorman or a janitor or not, in Portugal, it's often the case. So Leonore, wanted to write on that, and Adrienne had it about the security guard that was there. And I would talk about the concierge in social housing initially. Now it's not the case anymore, but initially there was a concierge who had an educating function. So there was in middle class mass housing, there was also concierge, but that was just to leave the key or not. While in social housing, the concierge really looked if the inhabitants behaved good, if they cleaned their apartment, if they were not staying too long on the galleries, if they don't walk on the lawn, and so on. So they had the control and educating function. Then the atrium, Filippo and Gaia, we mentioned Gaia, to write on the large floor entrance halls and how the atrium is a way to distribute. And house rules, that was something that Lidwin mentioned. Do they the cleaning themselves? Is there a self-regulation, or with schemes whose turn it is, or is there a cleaning company or a cleaning staff there? So that is one example of how we thought, okay, we can write on that. The second 10 were the rooms in the house. There, Lidwin would take the coordination. And the rooms in the house, for example, the best room and the TV room. Leonor would write on visitor's room as the best room. I would write on the best room that is not used, especially for middle class, for visitors. The kitchen, Lidwin would write about several kind of kitchens. Anna done about the kitchen as the maid's domain, so there is still a maid for a long time. And then Maria about the maiden room next to the kitchen in Soviet regime. And after the 1990s, it's more the coming up of the living kitchen, a bigger kitchen. Then the finishing and the appliances, the devices. So Lidwin would write on the kitchen worktop and the more expensive tiles that are used in middle-class mass housing. So how the materials make the difference. The floor plans, there were several people who would write on how the floor plans improved, and the floor plans made the difference between what was social housing and what was middle-class housing. So Maria for the Soviet Union, Klaus on the pistol gang, so the plan in the form, the shape of a gun, and then Lidwin on high-rise, the open plan, and the doorzone woning in the low-rise. So there. And then the importance of a guest room, and then sometimes the guest room is the same as the best room. So we have to see. The idea was that we have a main topic, and then we have paragraphs on these topics, and then we come to conclusion. Then another was the marquise and the terrace, and that Leonor would be the leader of that, and Eva would talk on the balcony. The marquise as a typical Portuguese element to close the balcony. Adrienne said in Hungary you have also extended interior space, that people extend their interior space, the same practice. I would talk of extensions of the living room by balconies and prestigious balconies without use. So it was clear in the middle class mass housing that they make balconies just for the view and not for use. And then what we call the working balcony, that's a balcony that is used for the laundry but not to sit and to enjoy. So Anna would write on that. Then the veranda is also an element to extend the house and or a winter garden or a greenhouse. And after the lectures of yesterday, I would think the rooftop is also a way of informal extension. And in this case, maybe a whole extension, but sometimes also a terrace extra. So I think there Serbia could come in. The swimming pool, a swimming pool as element of prestige. In the project of Portugal, there are collective swimming pools in the high rise, so that could be an element. And in Belgium, the constructing a swimming pool in the garden was an element also of prestige, the end of the 60s. And it stopped when the oil crisis came up. Then, no, not so much private swimming pools anymore, but yeah. Then the garden was definitely also a very important element that distinguished social housing from middle class housing. Around fencing, there were a lot of things. Klaus would write on that. Lidwin, fencing around the backyards, and Maria also on landscape design and private gardens, referring to row houses. Another thing, is it used or not used? So often it's not used. It's just for prestige, for the aesthetical thing, but the cost for maintenance is too high if it would be used. And so as a result, it's often a lot of greenery, but not used greenery. And Anna would talk about collective gardens as prestige design, and Adrienne on undefined green spaces. So you often have, especially in former communist countries, there is green spaces that is not defined, that is just there. And then garden symbol ornaments in the garden and art in the garden. Lidwin wants to talk on the culture of attributes, objects, and ornaments to express your identity. So the kind of statues in the garden show something about the inhabitants. Anna would have it on about integrated artwork in the building or in collective gardens. And then the installation of playgrounds in or around middle-class mass housing and how that is been there. Then the garage. The garage is definitely an element of middle-class mass housing. In social housing, like in Belgium, it was even forbidden to build garages. And then later, after 55, it could be collective, and more later, they could allow it. But in the high rise, you had no garages, while in middle-class mass housing, commercially developed, there was always a big parking garage, even very big. We have a case that they now closed off one of a branch of the garages because it was too much. And so on how are these indoor parking garages designed? They are often covered with underground, half sunken or completely sunken. There are variations, a private box or rather a collective underground garage. And then on individual parking garage, also many of us, like Adrienne, wants to write on the conversion of garages into small shops. Lidwin on how the garage is also used as storage space and working space and playroom. Also, I want to write on the symbolics. It's on the one hand private, but on the other hand, it has also a collective function. It's used for teenagers' parties, for rehearsals of music bands. It's the laundry for the women, but it's also the tinkering space of the men. So it has a really multifunctional and gender diverse connotations. And Tino wants to write on the carport as a widespread phenomenon and symbol of construction and family life. So that were and then the last one was advertisement. Tino was really fascinated by how the leaflets and the brochures on middle-class mass housing were depicting these apartments. And so flyers and sales ads, and here Constantino would do something on 2, 3, and 4-room apartments. Then the number of rooms in advertisement to communicate to the future residents. So the amount of rooms is more important than the size of the rooms. And so they prefer 4 small rooms than 2 big rooms because it can be sold as a 4-room apartment. So again, how prestige or the change the size, the price of it. Then aspects in the advertisement on reliability, financial prospect, hygiene, and the themes that come up. Lidwin on the Goed Wonen campaign, how to live correct in according to modernist lifestyle. And also Adrienne would write on that. Billboards in public space for new developments. That's something that Tino wants to talk about. And we talk Yale maybe also, remembering her comment on a presentation once. The model apartment, the possibility to visit the apartment before you can buy it. That was Anna want to write on that. And Tino on the data collection of average apartment of Swiss housing, resulting in a mock example of the average apartment. So he wants to make a kind of average apartment of how a middle-class apartment could look like. So we had 6 topics and 6 proposals, and then we presented that the last day again to Filippo and Anna. And some of the remarks were like, it reads as a book. So we had the idea it could be, that's maybe I have to show this first. We thought the lexicon is could be part of the atlas we are making for the COST. So to be part of the whole COST publication, the lexicon templates. But then these thematic essays, we thought, okay, if we do all the effort to write academically on it, we should try to make an academic publication. And so the possibilities that were mentioned were DASH, it's from Delft, the Journal of Architecture, the SAH, and Adrienne also had a link to online open source journals. I mailed her to have the link again because they seemed interesting, but I haven't noted them. But we didn't decide yet what would be the final output. But so then to our discussion, Filippo, he said it reads as a book, so he did suggest to make a book of it. References like the Elements by Koolhaas. Tokyo, I don't remember what he meant with Tokyo, but there was something with Tokyo. He said we had a very architectural typological approach that was less linguistic. So indeed, we took that, we came out in that direction. Only some of the terms will be linked to the lexicon. It will not be one-to-one. So not all the words of the lexicon will be included in these essays. The table of content could lead to a dialogue, and there is a certain degree of heterogeneity. Most of them are typological, but the last one on the advertisement, it's not typological. It's more on representation, and so it's more about the process than it's about the space. So there we should think, how does that paper or essay fit with the other things? So that's a remark. Also, Anne said that it reads as a book. It was a necessary step between the lexicon and the essays to do it. The typological approach will use to will more talk about use and dynamic, and instead of a general architectural book on, for example, industrialization. And we should make a distinction between collective and individual housing. That we shift between those two. And in a team issue, we may have maximum 6 or 7 articles, but so far we have 6 articles. And then we got from both of them references, bibliographical references, sometimes the publication itself. There are several, one of Filippo and Gaia, and Anne send also references. So if you go to the private space of working group 2, you have the references that can be useful to write these chapters. Okay, so I'm at the end of the, there is something practical I can say, but here I want to, maybe we can go to this slides to hear how you, how you see it, and if you got inspiration, like, okay, I would like to contribute to one of these, or there is missing something completely, or how you see it. Yes.
Which I think is also all the buildings in the class, but some, and it's very important, is the double entrance of the apartment. It is also related to the double presence, the double staircase. So one is the service staircase, which leads generally to a smaller door, which is the kitchen door where you take the goods. The other one is the main staircase to the entrance, and this makes some important identity of, and I would add that. I don't know if it can be added to one of the items for entrance, but I think the entrance is related more to the entrance of the building. So it's also related to rooms of the houses, but outside. And I think it's important because it gives also an identity, a circulation inside. It's not a typology, it's really representative.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will look for the document and I can add names in the meantime. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that probably is also important.
I don't
No?
think it's working.
Works? I know.
I don't know. I need my other glasses. You can read what it says. Maybe there is a wrong. Oh, you need one.
I also need, yes, this on. Okay, I just wanted to add, I think it's also important to say if there are double staircase in the building, that normally one staircase is for service, for leading to the entrance of the apartment for the kitchen, and the other staircase, the main staircase of the building, leading to the main door of the apartment. Sometimes this is an important middle class representation because you have these two entrances. I would add that in one of the items. I don't know if it's
Okay.
the one.
And what is your name?
Aleksandra.
Yes. Okay, I will add you.
I can add that this question about the two entrances is also in Portugal. So
Okay.
there are many cases. For instance, if you have the room for the housekeeper or something like that, you always have the two entrances.
Okay.
It's very common. But what I felt in this kind of situation is that, and linking with the middle class, that these issues start to be joined or linked to the middle class, but in the last decades we lose it because it doesn't make sense anymore.
Over time it changes.
Over time, even regarding or according the middle class mass housing. So we start with that. Not, I don't know any case that we have a swimming pool in the top, in the rooftop. I don't know. I'm not
maybe
saying
in the garden.
Exist. I don't know. But what I know that this kind of situations start linked to the middle class mass housing, but over the time they are losing. And for say something, maybe from the 70s up or 90s for sure, it's very difficult to find dwelling for the middle class with these characteristics. So it's not a problem because I think it's interesting to understand what happened and why happened.
Yes,
So,
yes. We, as a framing of it, we realized we should say something on the transience, we call it, how things change. Maybe? Yes. How it changed over time. So we will all, if we write, we will always have to frame very well, like what is the context, when was it used, when was it a habit, and how did it evolve? That will be, and in which country. That will be real precise. Yeah. Yeah. Gaia?
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
No, the first is related to what Ines was saying. I totally agree that maybe the reflection in the introduction, the trajectories of changes, so the change in symbolic value and meaning that these spaces had at the time and what they represent today, even in terms of design strategies, because it can become an interesting. The second is that I'm sorry, and I was also discussing with Filippo that Italy was not present, well, Italian, when you started the writing, because looking at the categories, I think we can find a lot of analogies in the, for instance, I was thinking in the entrance, more or less.
Your image was also.
The aspects, because it was a dispositive of planning, the place for architects to make a distinction in terms of value of the building compared to the social housing. It was the place of collaboration between artists and architects. So it has a lot of But I think that then crossing the diverse articles, the garden, the faces, we can probably, if you agree, integrate a few aspects of what these spaces represent for the Italian case in that moment.
Yes, yes.
And this is one, so we will surely do it because I think it's interesting also to see certain analogies. And then the second point is related on the decision to individuate this category. Many of them, beyond the last, probably deal with typological, so typologies. While the last advertisement address more representations, narratives, images about the
yes,
class.
yes.
So I was considering in the lexicon, there are many other aspects related to processes, to policies, to actors that are not so tangible and are not evident in this list. Do you think that there would be the possibility to add a seventh category that would address these aspects that are relevant but are not related to typologies, I would say?
Yeah. Other topics.
If you want to answer to guidance, or we join the first?
Yeah, you can do. I just agree. I think, yes, we should add you and you and Filippo where it fits. And we also agree that there are more elements than advertisement on the process. We tried to make it feasible and like, the question is, will we make a broader book with also all the processes in? Or will we say, no, we make a team issue on the typologies and we make another team issue on processes, for example. So that are the possibilities.
I didn't want to be naive of not being there. I didn't follow the discussion.
Yeah, and that was at the end of the day. So we didn't thought further than on it. It was like, okay, we have a work plan, we can continue and we will show it in the meeting in Belgrade and see how we evolve then.
It's not exactly a question, it's more an observation. I also agree with you, Alice, that perhaps this is more self-consistent and coherent to focus on kind of typologies, but at the same time representations of the middle class through housing. And I wanted to observe that these...
Can you take it a bit further?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Further.
Okay,
yes.
Here now? Okay. So I wanted to observe that these categories like garage, garden, that you have noted down at the beginning, the first slide, I think, it's interesting that they are also some sort of indicators of luxury and comfort. And this is kind of a proof that they belong to the emerging middle class after the first decades of the post-war period, during the first decades. So I find interesting that in the way these categories relate strongly with what we perceive as the material output of the middle class.
Yes.
Yes, they are kind of indicators of
distinction
kind of
became a very central
elevation.
term in our discussion. Like
instance,
Tino was initially not really aware of what it was. They made a template, but the template was like, first you have garden cities, and then you have high rise, and then you have low, and
yes, but I mean,
it's in every country. And then we say, okay, no, we want to have the elements specifically.
I mean,
and
like in Greece, I have discussed so many times about the polykatiki and Antiparchi, but I mean, in Greece, to have a private garage, it was already something. So I mean, as you said, it might have been materialized in very different ways throughout Europe, but then there are certain elements that are considered to some kind of social elevation in a way.
Indeed. Maybe use a microphone, then at home they can follow.
What about outdoor facilities?
Yes, that was also in it. And we found that in social housing, at least like in Belgium, in social housing, there are facilities outdoor, and in middle class, it's often prestigious, but not to use. A lot of greenery, but not to use. So, and that's one of the elements that can be there. And in other countries, it can be different, of course. But it was very
But
striking.
they're part of the planning standard, you know. It's not just the way how they are used, but they are planned and built with,
Not
you know,
always. Maybe in Greece,
Uh-huh.
or which country are you from? Greece?
I agree a bit with her because, in fact, the path of the workshop was effectively to go through the statistics and to go to the pictures and the concept of housing middle classes. But in fact, for example, when you fix on pictures and on spaces, you fix, for example, for the garage. But in fact, behind the garage, there's an object, is a car. And the
Is
car,
it what?
the car, the car,
Ah,
the
the car.
vehicle,
Ah, the car.
yeah,
Yes.
is very important. Is very important because the car is important for the middle classes in housing.
Yes,
housing
that's
classes.
what we said.
Yes, and they want the car be near the houses, and so I think that it's maybe we can have a chapter with the garage and the transportation, because it links, and the object car I think is very symbolic of the middle classes and in different moments, and it's very strategic. I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Parking area, car, garage, and all this. And it's out. But yes, but it's all outdoor.
But they're talking about garages, pet, you know, and the house and the garage because the car is something.
Yeah, because it's outdoor facilities, and how you manage outdoor facilities for middle classes it's very.
But this is the difference, let's say, the differences between Israel and France. We don't have a garage for each unit. We have a parking area where you have a slot or two slots for your house, which now it's a big issue because you can buy a building with one parking place or two parking places for the middle class. So it's kind of a big issue, and it's important how you look at this parking area. It doesn't matter how you call it. I think it's important.
I would move the discussion to the part with the rooms.
Yes.
If you can show it.
The
Yeah.
rooms.
So I have an impression that it's rooms related to the flat only, and
Mainly, yeah.
we should add common rooms or spaces within the building. For example, in ex-Yugoslavia in the late 50s, early 60s, on the roof terrace, there were common spaces for laundry, drying of laundry, for meeting of the neighbors and things like that. They were abandoned later and turned into small apartments. But at one point, those were common spaces. And there are other examples. I'm just giving one example. So I have an impression that the rooms are relating only to the flats, and we should have another comment, whatever topic, which deals with possible common spaces within multi-apartment buildings, because in different periods they were treated differently.
Okay, what's your Vlatko, is it right? Your name? Would you like to be a leader of also such an article on that?
You are very fast.
Yes, I am. I want to make it concrete, so.
It will take you some time to think about it. Well,
Okay.
if it's the end of May, it's almost impossible.
No, the end of May is for the lexicon. So for the lexicon that I showed, what people are already expected to make actually, this is for the end of May.
And the other template?
And the other, and yeah, the first template was already, it's already gone. Also the same, let's say.
We are not going to complete that, or we should complete the first one because we have just missed it. Okay, we sent material for the second one, but not for the first one.
For the
okay?
lexicon, you mean?
Yes,
you sent it.
but we don't have. Yes, but not for the first template. With the
Not this
bibliography.
template. This. Wait, what is the country you are? May I also ask that? The country?
Yes, North Macedonia without a dash between North and Macedonia.
North Macedonia. Okay. Yeah, it was in the other document I have to add.
I find the idea very interesting, by the way. It reminds me a little bit of the pattern language of Aleksandra, and it doesn't have to be conclusive. It's choosing a set of components which relate to the middle class debate on housing. Which way are you interested in producing it? For example, you can have authors, but you can also have contributors. For example, if each of these chapters begin to take shape, other people can contribute case study material or references from their respective countries, in order to enrich the narrative of each of the conversations. So if you intend, for example, to circulate drafts, when each of the chapters begin to take shape in bullet points, then people can begin to contribute other comments, case studies, photographs, or whatever it is that you need according to the shape of the articles. And in order to be able to see how far we can contribute, I think it needs a little bit more amplification on paper on each of the topic areas, which I think will help us come up with ideas.
To make it in Google Docs or so that people can work in it.
Work in it, exactly.
Of course, there's also a challenge. I don't know, we have 34 countries or so. If they all write some words, you have the amount of pages. So we also will have to look.
But you can do an editorial on it. For example, if you've got a template where people contribute ideas and photographs, then you'll make a selection. You'll make an editorial job at the back of it in order to contain it or expand it or whatever. It's just an idea for more people to contribute, because it seems that lots of people have views about all of these things with from their own understanding or regional references to each of the topic. It would be nice to capture that in a book, and having editors, authors, and contributors in order to enrich the material.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the common areas, we have several houses, buildings in Israel that had these common areas. Now they become co-living areas. I mean, there is a renewal, there is a shift, but not in the building size, or well, also in the way they develop the inside of the buildings. They redevelop it, and they took the common areas and make them co-living areas, like WeWork areas. So it's very interesting because you have the same
Collective
ideas,
working.
shared spaces, yes, but with new ideas that relate to these days. So it's very interesting because it's renewed area for middle class people, usually young people, but they use the areas differently, the common areas. So I don't know if it happens elsewhere, but I know it happens in Israel.
Okay, I noted it.
I don't know if you're going to say afterwards, or could be that I'm overlapping, but this is very interesting. How were you thinking to develop that actually in the product, the publication? And for this, I think that this work would be very interesting to do transversally within the countries, not divided per countries. I think this is, and I think it would be very good to have lots and lots of images. So probably people could contribute to add lots of images and then doing a selection. And then next to the image, I would say where it comes from. And in a way, it's the visualization of differences that in a sense would talk about localities. But I think it would be very nice to see lots of doorbells, lots of doors, lots of entrances, lots of that.
Yeah. No, so far now, the lexicon itself is a place where the images are put. And that will be part of the communal publication. For the other one, yeah, it will be another kind of layout and another kind of approach. Yeah, we were thinking about more classical essays or a book, yeah. So, but yeah, I agree that the material, the graphical material will be important. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Vinita.
I'll try not to be very long and extensive, but I have three
Three questions.
The first thing is maybe is it okay with this microphone? I'm not used to it. The first thing is related to the materials that are used in housing, and it will be very interesting to make comparison of not only materials but also structural techniques, because they really impact the type of the housing plan. And if there is a balcony or loggia, this is very important, but materials are the most visible, and I think they fit most in this structure that you propose for the typologies. Especially if one of the targets is to make distinguish between the social housing and middle class, because materials make a great difference actually. The other thing is...
So you would like to contribute to the part of the materials, right?
Okay. Well, then maybe I will not have more proposals. I'm joking.
Of nobody speaking.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, but materials are in it, in the entrances, and in the
everyone will
plan
say
to,
a few things about it. Yes, it's important for sure. The other thing is a question. You said that there will be one issue aiming at typology and the other at the process. Maybe I have missed it, but we said nothing about the process, and this was the first thing I wrote about the management of the housing, which implies lots of questions. And as this is quite a broad topic, maybe it should be another issue, not this one. Am I right?
We have the janitor in it, so the cleaning, but that's more the cleaning of the communal parts. That is so far in the SS, because sometimes it's how do you say, a system that everybody has to clean 1 week or so. That is in, but the cleaning of the house, you mean? That is not really a topic. Of course, we talk about the kitchen, and then cleaning will be, you cannot avoid to talk about
the garden, for example, and the public space.
In the topic on the garden, they will also talk about the maintenance of the garden, because it may not be used because it's too much maintenance otherwise.
well, maybe we could discuss if this topic, because it's a horizontal topic that unites all these spaces and the topics that were listed. Maybe it is good to make another chapter for it, because it's very different if it's a privately owned flat in a multifamily building. And always there is a question about these communal spaces that Vlatko mentioned. Or if it is a rented flat in multi-flat building with a private garden, not exactly gated community, a gated complex, but just a building with a large space for outdoor facilities that we found very lively in the social neighborhood. Maybe it is good to have a separate chapter about this, because it makes a great difference.
Ah, yes. Okay. Maybe. Lidwin is there. Okay. Okay, but Manya, thank you and sorry and so I think there is one really big one of Lidwin.
Yeah.
You cannot see.
I can read it if you want. Lidwin said, I think the form of the articles is a challenge, with different countries contributing. Not all countries should contribute to every article, only if it is significant or relevant. I am sorry.
Maybe if Lidwin is online, maybe she can explain it live.
Just to join in. So.
Yeah, she could join. Okay. He came up? Yes, okay.
Hi. I just wanted to show you my kitchen, that's all. But can you hear me? No, just a short comment. First of all, thanks, Els, for this very clear presentation and also for summing up the outcome of our discussion a few weeks ago very clearly. It is just to somehow reinstate some of my previous comments, because after seeing the overall picture once again, I have one, let's say I have a stronger impression that if we go for a fully typological choice, so if you sort of go for the elements of the house as the structure of the thing now suggests, I have the impression that we risk of losing something. While we were discussing, I was going through the lexicon from the different countries, so the different terms that have been chosen by the different countries. And to me, what is interesting is the sheer variety of the terms that have been chosen, which do not just refer to domestic space, but evoke really a plurality of dimensions. There are words that refer to the community dimensions. So they evoke the existence of a community within the building, or on the contrary, emphasize the privacy of the complex. So a dualism of community versus privacy. There are other words that are related to, let's say, social distinction or stratification. So they suggest that the house or the complex belong to a certain type of social group. The French example of sans suffit, which is a fantastic word, I think is a good example of that. And then we have also words related to the processes, to the policies, to the management, so to a more bureaucratic and political realm of housing. And also we have the words related to the spaces of the house, the elements of the house, the rooms. So these are also very much present. But I have the personal impression that this variety is very offers a strong message about the different perspectives through which middle-class mass housing was experienced. And to me, it would be great if our publication with this could already, from the very first moment, offer a glimpse of this variety. So not just choosing one direction, but having different choices that sort of integrate the different elements. To go towards this direction would mean probably to add other terms or other entries to the list that we already have. So to have some sort of counterbalancing, to keep the existing words, which are just great, but to add 2 or 3 more in order to suggest this plurality of dimension. I'm not entering the, so this depends on publication choices. It is definitely true that if we're going for publication on a journal, probably we'll have to stick on a narrower number of words, and probably they shouldn't become too many. But if we're going for a book or some other kind of publication, maybe we can think of a reasonable enlargement of the selection of the terms. And for example, I could candidate to propose one additional term that integrates some of these dimensions. And finally, just an observation on the modalities of production of these articles. I have the impression following the presentation that maybe this model can work if each entry has a clear coordinator that is sort of responsible for editing the whole entry. So really one person responsible for the whole thing. And maybe this could be seen not just as a collective writing exercise, but possibly also as a potentially different procedure in which, for example, the person in charge somehow interviews the other people from the other groups or from the other national groups in order to pose them questions, collect answers or impressions, and blending everything into a final article. So some sort of someone who is responsible for collecting information from the different groups and elaborating it together. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The idea was indeed to have one coordinator for each article. So that was the idea, that one is responsible and takes the editorial and organizational lead. Yeah, and about the variety of terms, indeed, when I put it now for the presentation again, I see how strongly we followed the typological approach. Although, of course, the terms will come back in the typological approach, but choosing is always losing also, so we have to make choices. But I agree that the material is so rich that we could make 2 publications, one on the typologies and one on the linguistic and the linguistic dimension of the terms. Yeah.
Among the typology issues, that is the organizing in the floor plan, organize and different, and the terms, that is interesting. So I would not split into 2 publications. I would make this diversity within the same framework. So I would mix the 2, I think.
And yeah, Ines, I see you want to say, react on that?
But I remember of another word that could be interested, that we call it's a name, the storage room. So the storage room, to put all the things that you don't want inside home, it's a room that reflects a kind of level of society. And it's according to the middle class. That, yes, is according in the middle class. And the opposite of the other concepts that we are talking about, this is still valid in our days. So, and this, the storage room, we can find it below of everything, below the level, the entrance level, or in the top. After the last dwelling. So, and this is a typology or a space that is keep in our days. So maybe it could be interesting.
I just want to vote for the idea of Filippo's ideas to sort of the coordinator sort of interviewing the rest of the participants for each chapter, because I think it can be a bit overwhelming for each one of us to really write distinct chapters for each category. So I think that it should be the work of the coordinator or coordinators to collect the information based on a questionnaire or something, and then
Yeah, but
maybe-
then it's becoming a whole research project. Okay,
Yes.
it must be feasible. Eh? That's why I
Seems-
think, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, Yankel. And if we would have a whole research project funded, I would say immediately, but we don't have money for that. We have to do it in our spare time.
Yes,
So,
but
yeah.
in fact, there is a book in France called Les Aventures des mots de la ville, The World of the Cities and the Adventure of the World of the City. And it's an international book, but it's written in French. And in fact, the basis is quotation in the literature, in books, in dictionary, in different kinds of, in review, in journals, because the track, I think, when we will fix some definition is that the definition is at the moment, and at the moment we're living now, and after it can be an evolution. So I think that it will be very useful to have some quotation. Why, for example, I take the example of Samsufi in France. Samsufi in France is a period, and maybe now young people don't know what is it, what is the expression. So I think it will be very useful to have the quotation and the date, and we speaking with that.
Okay,
and
maybe
the second point is very interesting, because what Filippo told is that we don't have to forget that what we are doing is the goal is to understand what is middle class housing. Okay, and it's not a dictionary of housing we want to do. What we want to do is to have some representation, diverse, because Europe is diverse, and our country also, the representation of middle classes, and it's very important. And the classification he proposed about community diversification and policies processes. I think it can be a guide for us. So in writing the different papers and the different articles.
Okay, thank you. I would like to have Lidwine also. She wrote in the chats, but maybe it's good that she can give live her comments or her. Lidwine, are you there?
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like some others before me, how to do this and indeed make it doable, and in the same time have countries contribute. So I was just thinking about ways to involve different countries, but in the same time have a certain format that can express all these differences, but also be one story. And I was thinking different from a dialogue or an interview. I was thinking to, maybe we could even per article have another format. I don't know if that is advisable. I was thinking to ask everybody the experience of a certain room or walking through a certain layout, and make the article describe differences and give some framework, theoretical background about these differences. So then you kind of guide the contribution, and the coordinator would make this comparative analysis. But I can imagine there's many ways to do it. So maybe everybody has ideas or can think about it. Maybe we can have different formats. But I guess it's a challenge to have all these different contributions of all these different countries, different rooms or elements, and then make a concise story. So ideas are welcome.
Yes, yes, I agree. Okay. There was a last slide that maybe I should show now as well. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, the notes are already there, and the presentation I made, I will also put. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. And I want to share my screen again. Okay. Yes, okay. So yeah, this I will put on the thing as well. Yeah, the last, or the second last, so about the publications, to finish what we did in work group 2 the last year, or what is coming up. So there was of Ahmed and Aurore, there is a book, and there is still, the deadline is the 3rd of June on urban renewal in mass housing, history, memories, and urban strategies. I don't know if Yankel or Ahmed want to add something about it, about this call. The mic.
Thank you. This book is derived from the seminar that we organized in Paris the last year regarding the strategies in the narratives, mostly regarding the mass housing and the process of urban renewal. And you are all invited to participate. The deadline is the end of June.
Okay, and maybe on the other one too, the other call, the deadline passed already, the 10th of April. Yeah, yes.
What about the second seminar, Ahmed? Because there was another seminar and you said that the joint publication from the both seminars, you know, the one, the deadline is June the 30th, you said probably for the second one presentation and the papers, it is going to be extended. So, but you didn't tell exactly until when, because your plan was obviously to have joint publication of the two seminars.
We plan to mix between the two books, but because we don't have money for publish two books. And regarding the second part, we didn't discuss sorry. Yes, we plan to make one book for the seminar of the last year and this year seminar with regarding the outdoors spaces, and the deadline will not be the same. For the second part, we didn't discuss yet with Yankel regarding the new deadline, but we think we will have for the collective spaces deadline to July, I think. We will discuss this with the Yankel, but yes, one publication with the two chapters. The first chapter is regarding the renewal, urban renewal, and the second chapter regarding the collective spaces. Yes.
Yeah, and then I've put the article Lidwina and I wrote on collective housing in Belgium and the Netherlands, but it was a team issue of Yale and Gaia, and many of you also probably published in it. I don't have it here now mentioned, but just to make you aware that it's something we achieved already as a result of the cost. And then the last thing is, as Ines did as well, the STSM. So there are still, we have done the past year 2 STSMs, Anna Milero and Céline Herings did one. They were both involved in the Antwerp workshop. And but I also want to remind you that there will be launched new STSM calls, and if they if they really contribute to this to the work in the working groups, then of course then applicate for it. That's you help the work further. So yeah. So. Vilnius is a training school. I think that will be explained tomorrow, but maybe Maria, you can also shortly introduce it. If the phone can be brought to Maria, yeah, in the back. Ah, okay, okay, fine. Yes, so we finished, I think, now. So so what I would say, if you have seen the structure of the papers we have, if you say, okay, I really feel this is so important in my country, it absolutely should be in there. Maybe you can tell it, and I can include you in the list. That's that's a proposal. What? 30th of May is for the lexicon. So I remind you that and we take September for this as a first draft.
I'd like to announce our call for papers for the upcoming conference of the Society of Architectural Historians, which is to be held in Montreal in April, but it has the opportunity of online participation, hybrid. It's going to be in hybrid form. And it's not on middle class mass housing, but it's on housing nevertheless. So I thought that it might interest you. It's called Beyond Housing Transnational Programs and Speculative Developments, and it focuses on the speculative small capital production of housing, using as an example the Greek case and the Turkish case, and seeking for more examples around the world. So it's another call for papers. Yes, me and Sila Karatas, who is from the University of Lausanne. I forgot the name of. Yes, I will send it to Ines maybe, and then or. Yes, I will send it so that will be up. Maybe Katarina, I think, is responsible for the website. Yes. So thank you very much.
Okay. At this moment, so you get it back. Okay, we speak here. Okay. So I hope the sound is good. I think we leave the door open, or because the fresh air is quite nice, I think. Okay, we leave the door open. We try to speak loud so that everybody understands.